according to a Tibetan narrative, when an yogi was told that he would attain nirvana after meditating for 50 years, he was doing so in a cave. When he was nearing its completion, two robbers pursued a buffalo into the cave and killed it. They ignored the ascetic's clear too and decapitated him. The yogi, furious because of his failure to reach his goal, came back to life through his siddhi. He put on the head of the buffalo over his torso and killed the robbers. And driven by his ego, he, now known as Yama, began to terrorize all of Tibet, whose inhabitants prayed to Manjushri for protection. Manjushri then, out of his compassion, took on a form similar to Yama, only 10 times more ferocious and powerful, and came to be known as Yamantaka. And after a long battle, Yama was finally defeated. Now, the symbolism of this narrative would be more clear if we consider his iconography. Now, the iconography of wrathful deities is certainly very interesting because they present a different picture from our conception of benevolent deities, traditional conception of the benevolent deities. And this problem can be observed regarding Buddhism too. Dr. Sinha, in his book Casting the Buddha, has drawn attention to how the English translation of Ashwaghosa's Vajrasuchi in 1839 and the publication of Sir Edwin Arnold's The Light of Asia in 1879 fueled the engagement of the West with Buddhism. However, the initial European fascination with Buddhism was to an extent riddled with the misinterpretation of Tantrism, which did not fit into their paradigm of quote-unquote virtuous doctrine. And this can be observed in L. Austin Wardell's The Buddhism of Tibet, published in 1895, where Buddhist deities have been characterized as hideous creations of Tantrism. So, the iconography treatment with careful attention to the philosophical implications is necessary. Now, there are several forms of Yamantaka. In this image, he has a pot-bellied bluish-black body with 9 faces, 34 hands and 16 legs. The main face is that of a black buffalo with 2 sharp blue horns and fire blazing from their tips. Above it is the red face of Hayagriva, and at the top is the yellow face of Manjushri.
In the form of the union of a male adept and a female adept, to realize the emergence of the Bodhicitta. And here, one has to note that several padas present the theme of sexuality in a violent, destructive, and often very disturbing way to a modern reader. For example, one of Busukupad's padas, it depicts the hunt, and it shows how the doe who tries to run away from the hunter, but she is her own enemy because of her own flesh. Apana mang se harina bairi. There is another very important imagery. This is Pada by Dhammapada, and this imagery is of dragging a dombi out of her house and setting the house in fire so the dombi cannot go back. Of course, there is the explanation that this dombi is none but the Bodhicitta, and the house that is set in fire is the house of social constructs or sankharas, the mental conditionings. But the way it is presented, it is very, how do I put this? It's very destructive, it's very violent. While there can be metaphysical explanations of the material body as the house or the doe and hunter as the adept, and the imagery overall creates a scenario that can be unsettling and disturbing to look at. Charyapadas, as I have already mentioned, do not take the social structure into view. However, some something very important happens here. By the end of the 11th century, there is a natural disaster in the Central Asian region. This causes the Mongols to move out of Mongolia and attack the western regions. This creates a sort of butterfly effect, and when the Mongols attack the Middle Eastern Asia, like the Middle Eastern regions, the people who are the original inhabitants, they run from there to save their lives. Now they have lost their previous land. They need new settlements.
So one is Moymanshing and one is Rajshahi. That's it. Okay, so next slide. So if we go into Krishnanagar dolls, which needs no introduction, because Krishnanagar artisans are very much adept, they are very much skilled in making not only dolls but also Durga Pratimas or Durga idols that are being worshipped. And what I have found, I am not a very much in-depth researcher of dolls, but still I have found that more than 500 artists are still working, and it is their traditional job to create the idols, to create dolls, or to engage in pottery or terracotta craft. So what they make dolls from farmers, tribals, to exact lifelike copies of Vivekananda or Lenin. And they also make dolls. So these artists are mainly situated in the area known as Bhumi. It's a locality. So the next slide. Here are some of the pictures that I could manage so that you get an idea of what Krishnanagar dolls look like. Yeah, that's the Gopal part, and that's also, these two figures are also made of clay. They are not made of stone or anything. They are all clay. Now we come to Bankura dolls. Now it's a pretty much wide variety. In Bankura we get a lot of dolls. But what intrigued me, or what I felt fitting to be presented in a nutshell, is that Vishnupur in Bankura and Swarnamukhi in Bankura, they come up with the Himputul. What's that Himputul? That the left one. Sorry, the right one. It is a sort of what I would say derived from goddess Chandi. I may be wrong. I need a little more research on that. And this is the Bhagavamani Putu. These two dolls have the folk god history. And if you ask me in what way is it done, or in what way, or ask me to trace the evolution, currently I wouldn't be able to say that. I have to go deep into that. Next slide, please. Now this is the Rani Putu. This is also very rare. So I thought taking this up might be beneficial, because there is only one artist right now, probably he is dead by now, or maybe not, who is making this putul. And what is so special about that? These are the putul, these are handmade clay dolls that are used to be sold in fairs. Now art collectors say that this is not a normal Rani, this is actually Queen Victoria. The clay idol, the folk artist per se, they made a representation of Queen Victoria, and you can see this is more like a Greek sort of architecture, Greek sculpture, with the no hands and ornament line. Yeah, pretty much without the crown, but still, it is not an Indian face. It is more like a Greek type of thing. Anyway, but this is on the verge of extinction. Now, I couldn't gather much photographs from Bangladesh because of the tensions going on, and because there is nothing much over the internet. But these are some of the things. I brought two pictures today. This is Tepa Putul. What is Tepa Putul? Tepa means pressing. The pressing in Bengal is known as Tepa. And as they make everything in hand, they press everything and make everything. The Putul gods is named Tepa Putul. That's it.
The Gomira mask dance, also known as Mukha Nach, is a traditional ritualistic dance form originating from the north and south Dinajpur districts of West Bengal. deeply rooted in the worship of village deities, particularly those associated with the Shakti cult. This dance serves as a medium to invoke divine forces, seeking protection and blessing for the community. The term Gamira is believed to derive either from Ramchandi, referring to the village goddess Chandi or Kali, or from Gamar tree, which is used in making these Gamira masks. Traditionally performed during the Bengali months of Baishakh to Ashar, mid-April to mid-July. Several pujas during this time, including Amad Kali and Shoshan Kali Puja of Dinajpur, are held during this month, and on both occasions, Gamira masks are needed for the dance. The masks are unisexual, are portray male and female characters. The mask makers usually themselves are the dancers. So they are multi-talented in this way. They perform during the festivals to supplement their income. The dance is characterized by the use of elaborate wooden masks representing various deities and mythological figures, each embodying specific attributes and narrative from Hindu mythology. Notable characters include Buddha Budi, representing of Shiva and Parvati, Chamunda, Shoshan Kali, and various animal forms like Bagha, that is tiger. The performance is deeply ritualistic, commencing with the Nishi Puja, that is a midnight worship ceremony where the masks are consecrated. The following day, dancers put on the sacred masks and perform in distinguished open spaces known as Gamira Tola. Often situated near shrines dedicated to Shakti deities, accompanied by the rhythmic beats of traditional instruments like the dhak, kashor, the dancers enters a trance-like state believed to be a manifestation of divine possession. This transformative experience allows performers to transcend their individual identities, embodying the deities they represent and facilitating a communal experience of spiritual transcendence. The masks and movements in the Gamira dance are rich in symbolism, serving as conduits for spiritual energy. The act of wearing the mask is not merely a theatrical device, but a sacred ritual that enables the performers to channel the deity's essence. This aligns with the principles of Advaita Vedanta, where the dissolution of the individual ego through focused devotion and practice leads to the realization of the universal self or a higher state of consciousness, that is superconscious. Furthermore, the dance evokes various rasas or emotional flavors, creating an empathic resonance between performers and spectators, culminating in a shared experience of aesthetic and spiritual bliss.
Themselves, which meticulously juxtaposes the routine of scientific experimentation in space with the tacit tenderness of interpersonal relationships in cosmic confinement. Nostalgia and excitement
Personal narratives steeped in silence and trauma shape oneself and challenge the hegemonic, monolithic discourses constructed by the nation state. Next slide. The trauma of the partition of British India in 1947 reverberates not only in the public sphere but also within the intimate realms of personal and collective memory. In Sabiha Sumar's film, the narrative intricately examines the interplay between historical trauma, identity, memory, and the gendered violence that accompanied partition. The metaphor of the well, acting as both a literal and figurative repository of untold stories, plays a central role in this exploration of memory, identity, and the unending struggle between public and private histories. The concept of national identity is often built through the dominance of a hegemonic discourse that overshadows alternative, marginalized narratives. In the context of partition, the dominant narrative is often shaped by the nationalistic fervor of a newly independent state, where memories of loss and suffering are repressed in favor of a collective, unified identity. In his book titled In Theory, Aijaz Ahmad refers to this as the nationalism of mourning, where the rupture of civilizational unity and the violent break between communities is internalized into a form of collective grieving.
Which is the internal subconscious formulation of language before it is spoken. He suggested that before producing speech, individuals engage in subconscious mental operations, structuring their thoughts into linguistic forms. Another concept that Woodruff introduced was that of apperception.
A unique way of life, deeply rooted in animistic beliefs and traditions, reflects a profound connection to nature and the spiritual world. Over time, however, their rituals surrounding birth, death, and marriage have evolved, shaped by the flux of modernization, external influences, and the pressure of the changing world. Now, in this paper, I'm going to delve into the cultural consciousness of the Toto community and focusing on their birth, their marriage rituals, and how these practices have adapted amidst the tide of time. Now, cultural consciousness among the Totos is an intricate blend of their Hellenistic worldview, oral traditions, and collective identity. They worship nature like rivers, forests, and mountains, believing that spirits reside in these elements and influence human life. This spiritual connection forms the bedrock of their rituals, which are not merely ceremonies, but acts of maintaining harmony with the nature. The Totos' isolation has preserved their customs for centuries. Yet the encroachment of modernity, including education, healthcare, and interaction with neighboring communities, has introduced shifts in their practices. Their cultural consciousness is thus a dynamic entity, balancing tradition with adaptation.
It is difficult to define it univocally, but it is generally associated with a quest for interiority, for self-knowledge, transcendence, wisdom, and the sacred. Eco-spirituality emerged as an organized discourse around the 1980s in the context of crisis of the environmental through the second half of the 17th century and the romantic idea of nature philosophy, and in the 19th century, more especially through the works of American thinker Thoreau